Success is not breeded by friendship, but instead discipline.
So have you always been a dandy, or did this happen in college?
Honestly, it has always been a thing because my dad. I feel like it's a Nigerian thing. You know how your dad knows you have to look neat, you have to look sharp? It was the only thing he thought about. African Americans, Caribbean Americans, Caribbeans, Africans, West Africans, West African Americans, all want to know where you're from. Now, when you ask me where I'm from, I immediately think, oh, where was I born and raised? I'm from DC, I'm from Silver Spring, I'm from Maryland. But then people were like, where are you from? And I'm like, well, you mean where my parents are from? My parents are Nigerian. And then they were like, so you're Nigerian, do you not want to be, that's automatically what happens, do you not want to be Nigerian? What is wrong with being Nigerian? And it's like, nothing, nothing at all. I remember liking my really, really early childhood. When I mean really early, I'm talking like 3, 4, 5, because that was, I think, the time where I had the most affection from my dad that I could remember. And I remember, I think it was like maybe when I was turning 5 or 6. You could tell it's traumatic because I remember it. He gave me a ride on his back or whatever, blah, blah, blah. He takes me off and he was like, all right, that's the last time you're gonna ride on my back. From now on, you have to go to school and you have to bring home straight A's. We're not friends. Learning my ABCs was very difficult, and the days of the week. He had this, what was it, play school, playmate, chalkboard thing, and he used to, I think I had to have been 3 or 4 or something like that. I don't remember what age it was. He sat me down in front of it, and I couldn't really get the alphabets. This was the first time that my mom realized that I could have had a learning disability. Obviously, that does not exist to him in the Nigerian, in his, the way he was raised. It is a deficiency on my part that had nothing to do with a learning disability, right? I bore a lot of that, the brunt of that, Nigerian upbringing in terms of discipline. What I attribute that to is culture, like Nigerian culture. Besides some of the progressive or more liberal parents, they're not your mates. They're not your friends. Like that was never a thing for them. In Nigeria, there was a certain way, I think, I've never even been, so this is speculative, but from what I'm told, there's a way that you raise children and you raise them as children. You don't raise them as friends. And that was his thing. That was his thing that he brought to the United States of America. The funny thing is, to him, he's more liberal than his father. So when I say that it revolved around him, I remember him and that point, and then the absence of him, because he also started working a lot as well. He was working at IBM. That I remember, because he would come home in a suit. And he had a nice briefcase, and this goes to the dandy question we were talking about earlier. He had like a tip-top suit, nice little brown briefcase, the box square joints, that no one uses anymore. And he stopped, and he had to he became a cab driver. I can't even imagine what kind of transition that had to be. And I didn't understand how much he worked until I realized how much I didn't see him in retrospect. And then my mom had to work too. So he's not there to, be of any real cultural use. And then when he is there, it's about, this is the person you have to be. Growing up in the area of DC and Silver Spring, you're all black. Like, it's not until later that I was like, oh, you were from here. That didn't mean anything. What was that? What was it with, you were black in the United States of America. You knew that. whether or not you knew whatever thing you identified with. College is when it became a huge deal. When I didn't sign up for African or Nigerian organizations, programs, weeks, events, there was a hardcore African contingency, but then West African sub-contingency and a Caribbean contingency. These factions were aggressive, to say the least. It was very clear that I identified with African Americans and African American fraternity and, Black Students United or, Black Men's Alliance. It obviously became a thing that people were just like, well, we know where he stands and things of that nature. One thing is that we grew up further away from the Nigerian contingency. They were all in one cluster. We lived away from that cluster. And I did have close Nigerian family, like distant relatives who became very close family. But we were all raised, I want to say, separate and apart from the Nigerian community that I didn't know was. Or I knew was, but knew we were far enough away where that didn't have much of a bearing on us. Like going to Nigerian churches. We went there on special occasions when we were invited by people. But, I was in a Catholic parish in Silver Spring, where it was my Catholic school with a lot of the friends who I now call, cousins and stuff like that. I wasn't raised just by my parents. I was raised by a whole community of people who I call family, who are probably not blood, who are not even Nigerian. My Jamaican aunt and my uncle from Memphis, they were married. I used to go over there a lot. It's not even as if they sent me to go and stay with people that weren't Nigerian. It was just, that was who was around, especially since they weren't around. That's one big thing. And this is not just attributable to Nigerian parents or my parents, but minority parents in general who had to work so much in order to support however many kids they had. What are you left with to fill the void? It necessarily has to be some group of individuals or some environment or something like that. And that's what happened. You go outside, you meet people, you go to school, you meet people, teachers, persons, whatever, what have you. And they shape your identity. And if they aren't Nigerian, how can they shape a Nigerian identity? Until I got to college, I didn't even know that Nigerians had their own group of people my age that were so happy or connected to being Nigerian, even if it's not something they've readily known or been a part of consistently their whole lives. A lot of them were actually born and raised for a little bit in Nigeria, and then they were brought here, or they've gone back frequently, neither of which I've done. But through college, grad school, and then in my social life while I was a professional, you saw how that was the thing, which was very interesting to me. I wasn't aware of it. If you think about when we were in college and was it Peace Square and all of them, I had no idea who these people were, right? A bunch of Nigerians were like, oh, see, you don't even know, we're hip, all this other stuff. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. That's things that I started to realize. It's blown up to a point where on African-American radio stations, like the stuff that we listen to in DC, 93.9, 95.5, they will now play this music. You know what I mean? It's like our generation's version of reggae. And that alone showed how this culture was growing, you know, and at what pace it was growing, and how it became socially relevant and acceptable. And so that kind of, you know, me not accepting this part of me when it was right there in front of my face, you know, from every angle, from everybody saying that, you know, would have just been disingenuous, right? From kindergarten to 8th grade, we were all black. I didn't even know, we were all black, you know, like.
And your last name was Williams?
And my last name was Williams. My name was Olamide, by the way.
It was what?
Olamide. Olamide, like I said, it was Olamide Williams, like Olamide, like, you know, like it was, it wasn't. I used to say, that's how I used to say it too. Like that's how I, you know, well, to be fair, that's how I said it. And then like when it was at home, obviously it was said a different way. My mom never even said my whole name. It was only Ola. It was never, you know, anything else. I was very much a community kid, you know, like he would always say, an American kid. That was him and my parents was like, you are an American child, American kid. You can't even sweep. You don't know how to do dishes. That doesn't mean we don't really know how to do these things. We don't know how to do it to the standard in which they knew how to do it when they were children growing up in Nigeria. So like, I also resented that. The only time he would talk to me was when he had to lecture me, right? You know, haranguing me on what it means to be a successful person, not a proper person, not good character, not integrity, successful, right? And if you're not meeting those standards, what do? You get in trouble. What does in trouble mean? You don't get grounded. That was a ridiculous concept. Like, you got beat. You got beat for the many times that you had transgressions, that you weren't, you know, appropriate, you weren't up to certain standards. So, you know, that was another thing that I failed to mention. I was like, that combined with the not friendliness or unfriendliness was, you know, led to a certain kind of resentment. I was working at, now, anytime I look at this stuff, basically what's under here are all GQs, so. Yeah. Oh my God. David Beckham's truly one of my icons. In college, I developed an adaptation to Du Bois's, like I think it was the beginning of the Souls of Black Folk, where I started to realize that he spoke about the double consciousness, right? I think it was the Negro and the American, right? He could have, in all his wisdom, he could have never foreseen that there was now going to be a triple consciousness, one of which I adapted in my writings because it's exactly how I felt. What he said is exactly how I felt, but from three different viewpoints, three different identities that I had to struggle with now. The Negro, the African, and the American. It doesn't go from just for me. It's a lot of first generation, I guess immigrant, because you're technically not an immigrant, but you know, like the descendant of immigrants. So you're the first generation American, right? This goes for Latino, maybe some Italians, you know, now, like Africans. You have a triple consciousness. And it is a difficult thing to navigate. And in college is where I first understood that this is what it was. What really I think hurt, actually, now that you mention it, was getting this view from the African American point of view in college too, which is shocking to me because I've never had to, you know, defend myself with African Americans. That's never happened. It was shocking. And I didn't have to defend myself as much as I did with the Nigerians, but it still became a little thing, right? After a while, it was so natural, our, you know, just the way we interacted, that it was obvious that, like, okay, this is actually who he is. Like, I can't even make a real argument as to why he isn't African American, but there was still that tension. The amount of Africans just in general in the higher education system is astounding to me. I mean, even the undergrad, I guess, but it's such a force now that it's undeniable. I have to code switch with them as well. You have Nigerians who will clearly like say he is not from Nigeria. But he is Nigerian. If you're from Nigeria, if you are from Nigeria, you can say, yeah, I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm from Abuja. I'm from Ibadan. I'm from Abibiwe or VI or something like that. I couldn't tell you that. At the time, it was just like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, this is my identity up until now has been African American. My parents corroborate this. My upbringing like my aunts, my uncles, like my community, like that's just what it has been. There's nobody that really said or made it a point that like you are Nigerian, even Nigerian-American, right?
Superman, the chairman of the board, the high-flying last son of Krypton. Aside from the ancient Greeks and Romans, Superman is undoubtedly, unequivocally, irrevocably the most magnanimously puissant and omniscient philosopher of all time. It has taken my feeble mind, much deliberation, contemplation, to come to the complete and undeniable fact that Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates all pale in comparison to the philosophical prowess of Big Brother Dean Superman. We are infinitesimally minute microcosms of manured-minded amoebas that you caringly embrace and inculcated wisdom through a supreme pedagogy on your path to enlightenment.
My mom, I don't talk about a lot as my childhood. I don't know, she wasn't really as vocal from what I remember. She was very nurturing. And she was a big buffer between me and my dad. You know, she was like, I feel like it would have been worse if she wasn't, much worse if she wasn't there. But it wasn't until like maybe the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you know, where my mom became more vocal because she really had, she had my back a lot, right, in school and stuff like that. My dad was just like, nah, it's his fault. Whatever the teacher said, it's his fault. He's getting beat for this. And my mom was like, there has to be some balance here. Like, he's not the worst child that we've seen, or that, you know, compared to the Nigerian standards I was, that I know, because they would stress how American I was consistently. That's one thing my mom did that I do remember. She made sure to explain to me how American I was and how Nigerian I wasn't. They would socialize with all of my friends' parents who weren't Nigerian, but they had their own friends that were all Nigerian.
And you didn't get to hang out with those kids?
They were so far away. Nah, not really. Like, and some of them that we did grew up just like us. Like my close cousins, like my god brother, you know, Dadao, his name was Charles. You know what I'm saying? Like, Shay, KK, Olu, Falari, like we all grew up like just the same way, really. And even Dadao was really far away, so I didn't get to see Dadao much. But it was like Falari and them, and then Shay and them, like the same thing. And we all had to realize this whole Nigerian thing along the way. KK, for example, who's older than me, realized that in college he went to UMES and University of Maryland. That's little Nigeria over there. You know what I mean? Like, when I go and visit them, I started to realize these things as well. And I started to meet people that I didn't know lived in Maryland, and I'm just like, y'all all knew each other from a childhood? Like, and then it was interesting. It's almost like you would think my parents did this on purpose, honestly. They never spoke about being Nigerian. That wasn't a thing that they, and if they did, I didn't remember it. I didn't even realize they were speaking a different language, really. I actually don't even speak Yoruba my mom spoke on the phone, all the time. And when she got upset, that's all she spoke was in Yoruba. And like, I got her upset enough. Where that's all, like, it's almost like as a child, that's what you have to understand what she's saying.
And she was probably speaking it to you from like baby.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause it's hilarious. People don't believe me, like, right? Like when they're like, oh, you speak Yoruba, you understand Yoruba. This happened 2 weeks ago. I had an SOM dinner 2 weeks ago. Someone's sister comes right from Nigeria, and they introduce us, and obviously they make this face to one another. You know how Nigerians are, right? They make this face to one another, like, he says his name is Allah, but, and so they're talking whatever, and he's like, do you even understand what we're saying? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, are you sure? And then they say something about somebody else, and I'm like, yeah, you just said about this person that their stomach is getting pretty big. and you know, they're like, you know, they're like, you know, shocked but impressed. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I understand where people are coming from, but it's just so funny how people, like, there's one view that's like, you're a Nigerian, what the heck are you talking about? And then there's the same people with the other view, you're not Nigerian. Like, you're not Nigerian, like, because of obvious reasons. I think it's interesting. I don't know. So, and to me, again, triple consciousness, African-American, specifically Nigerian-American, and if I could, I'd put the American before the Nigerian. So, you know, I don't know.
When I talk to Ola, I sense that he's more African-American than Nigerian-American. And that's not to say that the two have to be completely distinguished, but it is to say that what he evokes when I talk to him is a sort of African-American history and culture that's understood here in Middle America. In fact, I mean, I assumed that he was African-American before I even came to learn that he was Nigerian-American.
He's very Nigerian. He is also very black, though, you know, and I think the thing that's beautiful about it is that they're not separate identities. I think they both fuse together to make his identity. I don't want to just call it swag, but I'll call it confidence, right? I think there's something about Nigerian men that they have just a certain air to them, and it's not a bad thing. It's just something where, like, they're very proud to be who they are. Like, Nigerians are very proud people.
Everybody, we're gonna work the kicks out, man. We're gonna work the kicks out. You know, and then we gotta sit down. We gotta sit everybody down.
Okay, here it is. So this, I had to, like, actually, this is the Aegis album. I know.
I can't breathe.
Style
I can't.
icon. But GQ did a special issue of the 25 coolest athletes of all time. So
Okay.
you remember this on the Parmesan? Obviously, this is what I'm gonna get this first. Obviously, I already have nothing, but obviously that. Then this classic photo of Jordan.
Oh, wow.
This is what I want to show you that I had. The exact cover. So this is the same.
So wait, all the images in that book are covers?
Or not covers, but they're GQ shots.
Okay.
The man himself. This is a great photo, actually.
Incredible.
I understand everything that this man did. I get it. It took me a long time, but yeah, I get it. I think that's how he was raised, and that's how he knew how to raise a son. I would say he had a hell of a balancing act for a child like me.